Hey, folks, welcome to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Carlos, we don't have a guest today, man. My man. It's just the two of us. I don't think we need a guest.
It's not just the two of us. It's you, Shawn Windsor, and me, who's here to support you. I'm your wingman.
Well, I like to be your wingman too, and maybe that's a point. Maybe that's a good pivot here because we want to be there for each other, right? And I think we need a little bit of that. We want to be each other's wingmans, pals. Yeah, exactly. But look, this is a sports podcast, and we're going to talk some sports. We're going to get in a little bit of the Pistons trade with James Wiseman, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Lions and where they need to go, and that Ben Johnson needs to stay for 10 years, and that they're going to win the Super Bowl next year, I think, as you predicted.
And you gave Brad Holmes the draft plan, so it's comprehensive. Yeah. He doesnn't have to do any research now. Just
he doesn't, because I think that's important. We're going on. Listeners are out there, going to work. This is what we do, and we're going to talk some sports. And I think that can be. I don't want to say helpful. I don't want to overstate what we do, but it is what we do. So let's do some of that. But before we get to that, I just want to talk about what happened up at Michigan State a couple of days ago. It was Tuesday night on that campus, and I wanted to get your thoughts a little bit. There are some sports; it's a minor part of it, but there are some sports questions and that are linked to what happened. Some of the consequences of the school shutting down after a shooter shot eight Michigan State students. He killed three of them. Five remain in varying degrees of critical condition up at Sparrow Hospital in East Lansing. And just that night, the school being on lockdown, I don't know about you, Carlos. I know you have kids at Michigan, and I want to get your perspective, but I'm guessing like most people around here, somebody that has a kid up at Michigan State, right? And that's the thing. We're all linked to it in some way, or most of us are. Maybe all of us. Maybe just about all of us are. And then we can talk a little bit about the school shutting down for the rest of the week. That there are no activities. That there are no sports. Michigan State basketball team canceled its game with Minnesota. That was supposed to be, I want to say, Wednesday night. The question is, and we can talk about this in a second, they are supposed to play at Michigan on Saturday night at Chrysler Arena. And that decision hadn't been made yet, but I do, again, want to get your thoughts on what that might mean and whether Michigan has an opportunity to reach out, maybe have some kind of tribute to cool down the rivalry a little bit. Sometimes we can take these moments and have some conversation that way. I know that the University of Michigan president, Santa Ono, yesterday ordered the flags on campus at U of M to be lowered to half-mast, which I thought was a nice gesture. And, just feeling around Ann Arbor, talking to people, you could hear Michigan folks or see Michigan folks even I heard stories about Michigan folks wearing Spartan gear, the T-shirts. Maybe they know somebody. And, I think there's a little bit of an opportunity for some of that. But the first thing I want to do, Carlos, is I just want to read the names of the three there are more than three victims, but the three who lost their lives. I noticed in our excellent reporting on Freep.com that the parents of these kids, of these students, they don't want their names to be forgotten. So I felt like we could at least mention them here. I know it's a small thing, but I wanted to real quickly do that. So the names are Ariel Anderson, who wanted to be a doctor, who's from Harper Woods, and I think went to high school in Grosse Pointe. Brian Frazier, who's from Grosse Pointe, your neck of the woods, who his family and friends describe him as a leader, no matter what he was doing, sports activities, extracurricular activities. It's just one of these kind of kids that other kids gravitated toward. And then Alexandria Werner, who's from Clawson, and who was an all-state softball player, who was a league MVP, I want to say, in basketball and volleyball. Just one of these fabulous all-around athletes. So those are the three names. I wanted to mention those. And then, Carlos, I just want to get your thoughts on what happened and kind of where you were when you found out, and what are your connections to Michigan State.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's, I hope they do play that game, first of all, because it is a moment of, it can be a moment of healing when people come together. And no matter what school you go to, Michigan State, Eastern, Wayne State, Central, Oakland, doesn't matter. You know people at those other schools. We have friends, one of my daughters goes to Michigan, but she has a lot of close friends, and former classmates who go to Michigan State. We have tons of friends whose kids are at Michigan State. And I don't know how everybody else felt, but I felt caught in between. I know, your son is at Michigan State, and it was like I really wanted to reach out to all my friends and ask them, but I was like, I also don't want to bother them. And in fact, they were very much in a moment of crisis of dealing with it in real time, where the school was locked down and they're telling kids to shelter in place and, protect yourself and all that. And some harrowing details came out from some of our friends from posts that they had on Facebook dealing with this in real time. And it was just, yet again, another shocking, but not shocking, tragedy in our country, it's in our community. I live in Grosse Pointe, and we had vigils here last night, the Monday night or Tuesday night, for the two kids. There aren't words, to describe how sad this is. And I would hope preventable if we ever come to some kind of understanding about gun control and get serious about legislation and finally limit access, because I was telling my wife, it's just so easy to get guns. Back when I was a kid, Shawn, and in California, there's still, even back then in the 70s and 80s, was this strong culture about guns in the West. And it just, even though I didn't have a gun or my parents didn't have it, I knew where to get one. I had a friend whose dad was a cop or an ex-cop or had been in the military. And if you want to get a gun, you can get a gun in this country. It's not that hard. And if you're mentally unstable, there's not much to prevent you, as we found out in Oxford. And now we're finding out about this tragedy. But yeah, my heart goes out to all the families, to the communities that are dealing with it. I hope I hope these kids are remembered. They will be remembered, but I hope their legacy is that something changes. But that's just hope. I have little belief that it will change, but I hope it does.
No, I'm with you. You have hope. You don't have much faith. I think we're stuck. I think we're unique, and usually unique is something that's good. But I don't. Obviously, in this case, it's not, and we don't want to turn this into a political show or a gun debate. But I do want to say this: there's no other country in the world that's a reasonable democracy that deals with the kind of gun violence that we do, or the kind of violent deaths in general. Right? There just isn't. The numbers are overwhelming. Every country has mental health issues, Carlos. I have a really, really close family friend in the Netherlands, for example, who's got a child who's had some issues of anxiety, depression, that sort of thing that have gotten pretty serious. And I was talking to her not that long ago, and she's having trouble finding a psychiatrist over there. There's such a backlog, right? And this is in the Netherlands, and I'm not holding up as that country is some kind of perfect country. None of us are. But everybody has mental health issues. Everybody has poverty issues. Everybody has inequity issues. And so it's not that. The one thing we have that nobody else has are almost half the world's guns, right? And that's it. I don't know what to do about it. I don't know that. I mean, I'm not that smart. I know that as culturally we're really, really far apart, but at some point in our society, we're going to have to decide, who and what we are and what we want to be. And that's going to mean taking a look at the Constitution to some degree. We have amended the Constitution before, right? And I don't want to get into a Second Amendment debate here. And I understand how deep rooted it is for so many millions of people, and I respect that. And you want people to be able to hunt and all that. Again, I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole, but I just wanted to say that there's one thing that's not like any other thing, and that's the guns. How do we fix it? How do we fix that? I don't know. All I know is that Tuesday night I was driving downtown Ann Arbor to go pick up my brother-in-law from work. He's a projectionist at the Michigan Theater. And I get a call from Ann, from my wife, who just gotten off the phone with her son, Sam, who was huddled up in his apartment, his off-campus apartment just north of Grand River, not that far from Grand River from where the shootings were. He was, I don't know, 3/4 of a mile or so. And she called me, and that's how I found out about it. I wasn't on social media, it hadn't been for a minute. And so I immediately called Sam, and then we were on the phone with him on and off for the next 4 hours. And like so many other people, my son was listening to the police scanner, and the police scanner, as you know, and this has been, I don't want to diminish or make light of this by calling it interesting, but it is interesting. There were reports of 300,000-400,000 people listening to this police scanner, which is another topic for another day. And I mean, obviously, we want public access to our public institutions. But the problem, Carlos, is that there's a lot of misinformation, not intentional misinformation. It's just dispatchers talking to police and police talking to police about tips and reports that they're getting from the public. And some of them are true and some of them aren't. And so you have to sit there and listen to that. Well, the long and short of that is because this unfolded in real time, sort of crackling over the scanners Tuesday night, at one point, my son heard a report that there was gunfire 250, 300 feet from where he was living. His apartment. So he immediately shoved his couch in front of his door and closed the blinds and got down on the floor. And I'm just thinking about my kid at college, right? And he's not alone. I read stories and accounts of kids hiding under their beds, under piles of dirty laundry. My son's roommate, Sam, was locked in a basement in Jettison Fieldhouse on campus. He was there with an internship program with sports. He wants to go into sports management. He loves sports. Just a great kid. I've known him since the first grade. And he's down with 10 other kids. They cut the lights, turned all their phones on to silent because they're deathly afraid to make any noise because they don't know. There's so much report. They don't know if the shooter's going to come down the hall, right? They have no idea. And they're just, by the glow of their screens, huddled up for 3 or 4 hours with no bathroom, trying to listen, trying to get any information they can. And that was happening all over campus with tens of thousands of students. And just off campus, my niece, Mallory, my brother's daughter, who's a student up there, was locked in a sorority that was near one of the, not a couple of buildings away from the shooting. And this was true for, I don't know, how many parents out there? So this is what it's become. This is what it's like. This is where we're at. And, I'm grateful. I'm relieved, like most parents. I feel guilty. It could have easily been my son. It could have easily been my niece, my son's roommate. Sam has 2 classes in Berkey Hall where 2 kids were killed and where 5 were shot and where he was at earlier in the day. It's just completely random. It's completely random. And so we're going to have to decide at some point how much more we want of that. And that's the thing. Sam is back home. I know most kids are back at their homes. And, he's dealing with it like everybody else. And he's relatively lucky. Some not so much, obviously. I just think that, Carlos, we're going to have to make some society-wide decisions. Again, we're not here to do that on this podcast, but it's fresh, and we're going to talk about it because we're all connected to this in so many different ways. And, can a basketball game make a difference? No, but getting back to Saturday night, and should Michigan State play at Michigan? I don't know. I suppose that's up to the kids. What do you think? The players?
It's up to the players.
The coaching staff. Yeah.
I think that you, it's part of the healing process. Anybody who's dealt with, tragedy, everybody deals with it different ways. But the one true part of tragedy is you have to move on. You have to have catharsis. You have to have closure. You have to, process it. And sports, this is one of the things that sports does. It brings people together in these times. I mean, we saw it, the biggest example is 9/11, and, they canceled games right away, but then they came back and you see people together again. It's heartening to have that. And it's the perfect time. I hope they do it because it's the perfect time for both universities to put aside, their petty little, squabbles and the rivalries, whatever. And everybody understands, we're not only all humans, but, more importantly, we're Michiganders and basketball fans and football fans and everything else. And, it'll be, I can just see it's a made for TV moment, right? The hugs and this, I can imagine Michigan will come out in some Spartan gear or whatever it is. So I think our community, our state needs that. I hope they play. I don't know. What do you think? Is it a good opportunity for them? Or
I agree. I hope they play too. I mean, as long as the kids are up for it, and my guess is they probably would be. You want to, at some point, you want to be who you are and do what you do. It's never easy to say, okay, what's the appropriate amount of time? That's different for everybody. It's obviously not for us to say. But yeah, I think there's a real opportunity if they can play. There's some practical issues. Can Michigan State practice, right? Because everything's shut down on campus. Can they come to Ann Arbor early? Can they come Friday and use the facilities at Michigan to at least get one practice in? Is that fair competitively? I don't know. I mean, I know this. Look, I know these are minor things in the scope of what happened, but they're also not, right? It's also life, and to your point. So I think there'd be a great opportunity there for Michigan. I love the idea. Yeah, maybe somebody comes out in green and white. I saw a lot of that on social media. There's lots of issues with social media, but there are also some wonderful things, and I've seen a lot of that the last couple of days. I've seen a lot of Wolverines saying, "Hey, we're Spartans right now," right? And
Michigan's halfway there. They were doing this cosplay thing, right, when they were playing. What was it, Wisconsin, right? And Hunter Dickinson in the ski mask, and Jet Howard in the Free Jawan T-shirt, and so I think they're ready for dress up anyway. So this would be a good opportunity for them to put some Spartan gear on.
Yeah, it might as well. Yeah, maybe they could even dress up with the Sparty mascot. No, it's good. It's good. It's good to see you smile. Look, we're gonna let's wrap up this segment and then get on to the more regular part or traditional part of our show here after we take a break. But I just want to say this because we think a lot about young people. You have similar age kids. You have college age kids. We talk a lot about this. Older people talk a lot about this generation and what they're made of and why there's so much stress and anxiety, why suicide rates are high. There are lots of kids that are going through these traumas. I mean, they're in the hundreds of thousands now if we're adding it up around the country, right? The survivors of these kids, we can't diminish what that's like to have to go to school where we're supposed to keep our kids safe. And, every time this happened, there are 600-700 kids that, or more, depending on the size of the high school. It's usually a high school. Sometimes it's a college, right? I mean, in the case of Michigan State, that's 25,000 kids that just are now going to carry this with the rest of their lives, and we can't diminish that. There's real trauma there. On the other hand, these kids are amazing. You talk to young people, you talk to your daughters, you talk to your daughter's friends. Their sense of the world, their sense of other people, their connection, their willingness to connect and want to do good, to empathy, their curiosity. This is an incredible generation we have. As somebody pointed out to me the other day, yeah, the kids are staying home longer. They're taking a little bit longer to launch. But the flip side is we got some really thoughtful, interesting, hardworking kids. They're just dealing with a different kind of trauma than we did, right? And different issues. I just want to give a plug to the young people out there, And I know we're probably a little biased because we both have kids this age, but we see it, right? we're like, oh yeah, not in my day, in my generation, we did this. Well, yeah, that's true, and there's of course, and they're going to do the same with their kids, and I get that, but there's some amazing stuff going on with these young folks out there, and I want to acknowledge that, and I want to just put that in the context of what happened. In any case, do you have any thought on that before we take a break and come back and do some sports?
No, I'm right there with you. And yeah, we probably are biased, but I mean, I can't think of, dealing with this generation, dealing with COVID, dealing with all these, seems like weekly tragedies. And it does, if anybody out there doesn't have, isn't connected to young people, mid-20s or younger, late 20s and younger, they're very attuned to this kind of stuff. There is, I think social media has, the internet and everything has shrunk the world, and there's a lot more sympathy and empathy for global tragedies, let alone our national tragedies and local tragedies. And you're right, Shawn, they do think and feel a lot differently than our generation did. So challenges that are new challenges in the world, and they're going to be, I think they're going to be one of the more resilient generations that we've had in this country.
In the end, and that's what we hope for, right? That's the hope, and that's the faith, and I think that's a good couple of words to end with. We got to keep both of those. I know you believe that. I believe that. Most people do. I think probably almost all people do. But let's take a break, Carlos, and come back and get into some sports, get into some of these Detroit teams and trades, and the Lions winning the Super Bowl next year. How's that sound?
Perfect.
All right. Yeah, okay, good. We'll be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Carlos, let's try to bring a little levity here. In our own small, insignificant way, where you tell me how everything works, and I just agree. How about that?
No. It's you. It's because you tell us how the world works in your columns. In fact, you've given Brad Holmes a bluept on who to draft. I think you have him drafting
four running backs.
If my math, 4 running backs, 8 defensive linemen. What is it, 22 players or something? Yeah, he should, no problem.
Yeah.
Everybody but a quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. A cornerback would be good. Do you want to start here? Do you want to start with the Lions and the Super Bowl and what the trends are? We do this every year. What succeeds, and do you need to copy that, et cetera? I know we did this a few weeks ago a little bit, but it's over. The Lions are on the clock, and I think you think they're going to win the Super Bowl, right? So yeah, let's start there. We'll get to the James Wiseman trade and the Pistons in a minute. But so what you thinking, man?
As I think every year, I think columnists and NFL writers are bored, and so they have to come up with their
no, not bored.
If they're
be honest, be real. What is it?
If the Houston Texans just copy whoever won, those Houston Texans or whatever are going to, the Chicago Bears will win the Super Bowl if they just do what the Chiefs did.
Not bored, Carlos. Desperate.
You're right. I'm sorry. Desperate. That's absolutely the right word. There's nothing else going on. All the Detroit teams are out of town. There's nothing to cover.
They're not very good, right? I mean,
nobody's good.
Spring training, I guess. You can have hope there for 3 weeks.
Yeah, pitchers and catchers are barely there. Nobody's doing anything, and
our man's down there.
Our man,
finding his magic.
Jeff Seidel, gaming the system. He's down there because they don't have to play games and travel yet. So as soon as the team starts traveling to Port St. Lucie, he's out of there. It's like vapor.
Yeah. So what you thinking about the Lions? I mean, you wrote an interesting column. You started off with which you hadn't done in a while. I was proud of you to know that you're still in there.
It's just the default. Yeah.
Yeah. What? Oh, Ben Johnson. They need a post Ben Johnson plan. Yeah, forget next season. It's all about the season after that. They
yeah.
But your point, which is true. I mean, it's obvious. It's factually true, and it's a good Carl's point too. Both can be true, I think, at the same time. The offense, the teams score for sure. The teams, the best teams score a lot of points. It's been that way for a while, right? I mean, when's the last low scoring Super Bowl? The Rams and the Patriots, maybe.
Yeah, Jared Goff's Rams.
Yeah, 13-3 or something. I can't remember the 10-3.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the score was.
Yeah,
I don't think a touchdown came until in the fourth quarter, maybe even. But that was kind of an anomaly. So yeah, the teams need to score.
By the way, can you just imagine if the Lions in the next couple of years with Jared Goff, they actually got to the Super Bowl and the same thing happened. They couldn't score a touchdown with Jared Goff. I mean, that people's heads, Lions fans would explode.
Oh, yeah. Poor Jared Goff. That'd be his legacy.
We never should have gotten rid of Stafford.
Yeah, it always comes back to Stafford, doesn't it? So no, so your column was a good one, and you made good points like you always do. I think it is easy though to get lost in that it's all just offense. Yes, you got to be able to score a certain amount of points, but the winning comes when the defense can make a play or two. And the defense is not going to shut anybody down. There's no such thing. It's just not where football is right now. Maybe rules will change down the road, or maybe
now
the athleticism will change on the defensive side, and it'll start kind of clamping up again.
It's already there. Are you kidding? Those guys are insane athletes.
No, they are.
They're probably better athletes than the offense is. They are.
On the line for sure.
All 11 guys versus all 11 of the offense. I'd take the defense as more.
Yeah, the place of the offense you'd take the receivers and the running back generally. That's about it. But yeah, that's what four spots.
I mean, the quarterbacks are usually the fastest players on the team.
Yeah, and the receivers are usually right there with them, or at least one receiver is. I mean, with the Lions, their receiver's the fastest guy on the team, but. In any case, defense still matters. It just doesn't matter in the ways that we've always thought it matters, right? But it still does matter. And we saw that play out in the last couple of rounds. It's funny because I know you like that you haven't bought at the idea of Patrick Mahomes being Jesus just yet, have you?
Not like Gabe Burkett, no.
And he's an incredible player for sure. But I don't think it's for nothing that he ended up having more time and a better pocket throughout the course of the game in both the AFC title game and the Super Bowl. I don't think that's a coincidence.
Oh, you love your offensive linemen, don't you?
And the defensive linemen, right? I mean, Cincinnati got after Mahomes a little bit better than Philadelphia did, and they didn't score as much. And Kansas City got after Hurts in the second half, not a ton, but just enough in a way that Philadelphia didn't even come close to getting to Mahomes, right?
Oh, yeah.
In the second half.
We saw this with the Lions, as their defense got better in the second half of the season.
They started winning.
They started winning. And obviously, I mean, like Aiden Hutchinson was a standout, but they got contributions. As a whole, as a collective unit, they played much better collectively. There were a few standouts, and you had your James Houston, came out of nowhere and all this with all these 8 sacks, whatever it was. And, they got some meaningful contributions. But that's what you need. That's what you're talking about. Is you're not going to shut anybody down. But if you play consistent defense and you limit what offenses can do to you, and you give your offensive a chance, play complementary football, that's how you win. That's what we saw. I mean, both teams, the Eagles and the Chiefs both played, I don't think they played poor defense, but those offenses were just so dynamic. It's just going to be hard to stop them.
You can't. So you got to have a defense and that can force a punt here and there. I mean, obviously you're not going to force too many, clearly, but to force a punt here and there, that's what you got to have at that level. I mean, that's what we're talking about. The Lions are aspiring to the playoff level, so that's why we're talking about this. What's it going to take to succeed at that level? And that means, and to me, cornerbacks are important, yes, and I'm guessing they'll draft a cornerback. They need cornerback help. But to me, where you make the biggest difference defensively is if you've got a couple of guys up front that can make a play or two and wreck a drive, right? Cornerbacks are hugely important. They help. But if you got a couple of guys up front or several of them, all you need is one sack, and that's a punt usually, right?
Yeah. I've read about this before about I forget who said it. It was someone, it was an old Giants GM or someone about there was a large human. Jim Schwartz used to talk about this, the large human theory. And like there aren't a lot of large humans who move really fast and are really strong and have ball skills. So if you can find them, draft them. And he's talking about defensive linemen. And yeah, if you can find those guys, and we saw it, right? And Ndamukong Suh, and like he was so amazing. Yeah. And before that, you had the Doug Englishes and the fearsome, the Silver Rush and the fearsome foursome and Alex Karras. Those
Doug
guys
English, listen to you.
Yeah, big text. I mean, that's stuff you can't find those guys. Those guys don't shake loose. The Reggie Whites, they don't shake loose in free agency. It just, it's hard to find those guys. And once you have them, you don't let them go. I know Reggie White played for the Eagles too, and the Packers, but it's not common, and it's toward the end of their career more or whatever. So keep them. And then you fill in. I mean, like cornerbacks, the problem with cornerbacks is they get hurt all the time. They're small guys. They play they're asked to do a lot, tackling and all that. So you see them, you got to have a lot of cornerbacks.
Well, Carlos, you're also, if you think off the top, we haven't done the research. Sorry for all the, but cornerbacks, when's the last time that the best cornerbacks are playing in the Super Bowl or the title games?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't happen as much as you think. Darrelle Revis won a Super Bowl with the Patriots. I'm trying to think of, so Sauce Gardner's probably the best shutdown corner in the game right now. I mean, or one of the 2 or 3 best. And he's on a team that didn't make the playoffs.
Jalen Ramsey with the Rams last year.
I guess
he's probably the best cornerback in the NFL.
Yeah,
still.
I guess that's the best example. You're right. That was last year too. Sorry for them. Once again,
LA. LA. I didn't grow up in LA. I was in the suburbs, so I don't know much about the Rams.
Once again, sound like an idiot. But the key to that defense, of course, was the all-timer up front, right? I mean,
oh yeah, exactly. Aaron Donald, perfect example of what you need. But you don't have to do it one way. I mean, if you have the Bears in the '85 had amazing linebackers. They still had great defensive linemen.
Richard Dent
Dent was great, but Mike Singletary. He was the wrecking ball on that team, and but it was you need to have people all over the place. And I know you love yourself some trench warfare. The offense line, the big fat guys that nobody watches, they're the Shawn Windsor heroes. So I know you love it.
That's just in the end. I mean, here's the thing: if the skill level is fairly close between the teams on any given game, the difference is, turnovers. Obviously, turnovers can sway it hugely, of course, but the difference is generally who's got more time to run their playbook.
Yeah.
And it's really funny because the game is complex in so many ways, but in that way, it's not complicated at all. It's if everything else is equal or more or less equal. I mean, obviously if you got Mahomes and that crew on one side and, I'm trying to think of, who's a bad team. I can't even think of a bad team.
Texans are horrible.
The Texans on the other, the trenches don't matter that much. Right.
Yeah, if you have wholesale issues across your roster, but we saw with Jared Goff. I mean, and that was the thing. I mean, look at 2021 when the team struggled, and there was a whole issue with Anthony Lynn and all that. But you had a lot of injuries too. I mean, Frank Ragnow was hurt and gone for early in the season for the whole season. I think Taylor Decker missed some time, and
he did.
You had some issues at Burkett probably has all the stats on how many times the starting offensive line played together. It wasn't
not
a lot.
much. And Sewell was a rookie, right? He wasn't. He was.
Sewell was a rookie, promising.
He was promising, but not like he was this past year.
Not as good as this year. And this year they had a lot more continuity, and that really matters. What I'm curious about is there's kind of 2 schools of thought in the NFL about interior linemen. And specifically guards, but centers too, to some extent. And do you pay those guys, or do you let them walk in free agency and draft their replacements?
That's a great question.
I wonder what Red Holmes. We're going to find out pretty soon because he's going to have to make a decision on Jonah Jackson, the left guard.
Yeah, it's not going to surprise me at all if they draft a guard.
Yeah.
I don't know how high, but I would bet they I would bet they draft a guard. So
if they draft one in the first round, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
I don't see it happening. Look, we're gonna have lots of time to talk about the draft, and we'll get Dave Burkett back to do some of that. But just real quickly, for some to put a bow on this part before we get to the Pistons, do you think Holmes should and will sort of double down on the first round with defensive line, or does he try to get a cornerback at that 6, or does he go defensive line at 6 and maybe try to get a cornerback at 18? What do you think? Do you just kind of keep doubling down in that area because he loves his defensive linemen?
I think he will definitely get a defensive lineman. I'm guessing, or someone on defense, probably a defensive lineman, if he stays at 6, or even has to move up to get Jalen Carter, or whatever it is. I think he wants. They know they need more help on the defensive line, but they also, in the first round, the value is just not there for the back, especially for non-rush linebackers, for just traditional linebackers and cornerbacks and defensive backs. The value just isn't there that high at 6. Maybe he trades back, falls. What did they 18? Their second pick,
yeah.
18 pick, trades back to the 20s, late 20s or something, and then maybe gets a defensive back or a linebacker or whatever it might be. But they know they need help on defense. But don't forget. I mean, the thing with football and the draft and stuff. There's some politics to it as far as helping one. You can't just help one side of the ball. You got to help all your coaches. So Ben Johnson is sticking around, and I'm sure he's disappointed he didn't get a job this go round. But I think they're going to try to keep that offense going, and they still need some pieces. And you mentioned a running back, and behind Swift, I think they need a running back ahead of Swift. I think Swift's got a foot out the door. I mean, we know he's reached his potential. His ceiling, as you love to talk about in basketball, and the ceiling's just really not all that high for DeAndre Swift now. And it's time to move on. They probably won't, if they don't re-sign Jamal Williams. They got to have a replacement, and you need to draft a running back
for sure. And I would bet they'd take him. I would bet they'd take a running back in either the second round, or I think they have 2 third-round picks. Or do they have 2 second-round? I'm confused. I'm confusing myself all of a sudden. Well, they have 2. Yeah, they have 3 picks between the second and third round. How about that? And I would bet that one of those 3 picks is a running back.
I hope so, because it's as Jamal Williams proved, it's invaluable.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's going to be interesting. We got lots of time to get into that. But hey, man, like we said at the top of this segment, we're desperate. This is the Lions, and we're
Lion season.
Yeah, we're also survivors, and we are in a business model now where we try more than ever, especially in sports. It's a little bit different with news. News, you go where the news is to some degree. But in sports, yes, we have news, but we also try to make decisions based on what people want to read. I mean, I think that's obvious. That's the model. And
that's insane, Shawn. We base our stuff on what people want to read.
I know, but it's funny how, because in journalism for so long we're like imperious and above it all, and like we get in our little meeting rooms and like, no, we're going to decide what's good for you. You take your oatmeal and you like it. And,
what newsrooms have you worked in?
And you're not going to get any syrup or brown sugar at all. It's just going to be plain oatmeal with a little bit of skim milk. No, or oat milk, but back then it wasn't really oat milk around, or almond milk. In any case, though, no, it's so funny how we went from we are the arbiters of what's news in any given community to, oh, no, here, come. Yeah, we buy us, subscribe, read us, please. And okay, we'll write about the Lions. They're not in the playoffs. So what? You still want to read about the Lions. So we're going to keep giving you the Lions. In any case,
that's how it should be.
Yeah, of course it should be. I mean, it's self-preservation, man.
Yeah,
that's where we're at. That's where we're at. We got to get off the high and mighty ivory towers.
The one thing, I don't want to go on a big tangent because I know we need to take a break, but just the one thing we have to be careful of, and I hope that the readers out there probably agree with this, is if they don't, even though you may care about the Lions, there's other teams that we need to pay attention to. And I know I've subscribed. I'm not going to name the papers, but my hometown, you can probably guess what newspaper website I subscribed to. And I was very unhappy when the NHL playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs were up last year. And my local hometown paper I grew up reading didn't think it was worth sending a columnist or a second writer to to the LA Kings' first playoff game in 5 years up in Edmonton to watch your boy Connor McDavid. And so it's just one writer, and it's like that's the surest way. If you get into your silo of just, hey, this is all that matters, Lions, 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 then you're going to ignore a lot of things, and you're going to lose out on opportunities to grow your readership. So I hope our readers reach out to us and tell us, hey, man, you guys are missing this and you're missing that.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
We need to keep our ears and eyes open.
No, we do. And in the last week and a half, I've written a Wings column, a Pistons column, and a Michigan basketball column. And
what do you mean, Michigan and Pistons? That's what you do all the time.
And
the Red Wings it's going to be your one Red Wings column this year.
And those are none of those teams are thriving, obviously. But people actually read the Michigan basketball column.
Of course they did.
No, because they haven't been that interested in the team this year. We can study this internally, but it was Indiana, and that was part of it too, and it was a tough loss.
There is a baked in, and let's just be honest. And this is not a blue wall, it's not a conspiracy, but I think it's just true. The numbers tell us this. There's a baked in audience with anything with Michigan. You can write probably a column about Michigan softball, Michigan hockey, whatever it is. It resonates. Anything about Michigan sports tends to resonate in a way that it doesn't anywhere else. And growing up in LA and USC and UCLA were kind of like this. But it really wasn't. I mean, for a while when Pete Carroll had things rolling with USC, USC football was that, but UCLA basketball has never been that, even though they've been more successful historically. So there's something about Michigan in our readership that it's either Michigan love or Michigan hate. Hate reads or love reads.
Well, but there are limits to that. So like our Michigan basketball coverage is good. And Tony Garcia is really good, talented young guy. We're glad to have him.
Are you ripping Solari? Is that what you're saying?
No. But we just the numbers just haven't been there. The interest has not been there with this team this year, and the numbers have shown it. So that's why we were surprised. It's not that I wrote a column about the Michigan-Indiana game, and it's not that it did well relative to what we consider to be doing well, but it did okay considering how little the team's been bringing people in this winter. And it's not because of the coverage has been great. In fact, Tony and I were talking about this when we saw each other, before the game. It's just been tough. So for whatever reason, it hit a little bit that night. Again, that's relative.
It was the writing. Let's just say it was the writer who made the difference.
I think it was a frustration level because they had a chance for a really important win for the NCAA tournament and couldn't get it done. They're a young team. It
was close.
Stuff going on. Yeah, it was a good game. Kind of ugly in some ways down the stretch, but Michigan State basketball has generally done better, at least for our readership over the years. But again, that's fluid too. Oh, all right. We're getting in way too much backstage stuff here.
Maybe if Jawan Howard talked a little more, he could promote his program. How about that?
Yeah, that's another. Yeah, that's another.
I know you don't like criticizing coaches, so
no. I mean, you criticize the coach for if they mishandle something or the players or they're not being fair to something or just the general. Are they winning or losing? Right. That's where we criticize them the most. But I don't generally criticize a coach for not talking to the media or not being charismatic or not being comfortable. I mean, some people just aren't. It's fine. I don't feel like it's fair to criticize people that are inherently.
You're the head of your team and your program, and you're the face of it. And you're not going to talk regularly.
Well, no, he does talk. He just doesn't say
not as much as he should.
He just doesn't say much, and he's shy. It's just he doesn't know how. He's not comfortable.
Maybe you shouldn't go into coaching. Maybe you should consider a different career path.
Well, no, you can coach. You can be a good coach. I mean, but Belichick hadn't said squat in 20 years, but he won, so it doesn't matter, right? That's the thing.
Oh, if you just win, and you know what, honestly, and I'm sure you've been to some of his press conferences, and it's like performance art.
Yeah, it's true.
And there's always a moment, if you watch a Belichick press conference, there's always a moment where he'll say something, and it is dripping with passive aggressiveness, like thick honey, and even he has a little smile about it sometimes. It's just this crazy sort of bizarro world that's its own thing. But yeah, when you win, like, you just can't be stopped. I mean, you can do whatever you want.
No, you can, and that's the thing, and that's why Howard isn't really. I mean, whatever people think of him, he had the incident in Wisconsin, but that's different. But I think I mean, the last 2 years, he went to Sweet 16 last year, and the year before, he went to the Final Eight, and that team was really good. They unfortunately lost their most. Well, he wasn't their best player, but he was a super important player. He plays for the Pistons, Isaiah Livers. So he had 2 good years back to back. So that's why people aren't right. And now that they're struggling a little bit, we'll see. If they struggle again next year, then you'll start hearing it. There's a grace period a little bit, and then that once that's over, then man, the gloves come off, don't they? That's always how it goes. But all right, let's take one more break here. We'll talk a little bit of the Pistons trade, and then we'll get into our favorite thing. Does that sound good?
Perfect.
All right. We'll be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Carlos, you've been chomping at the bit to talk about the NBA, about the Pistons, about James Wiseman, their latest big man. And, I'm curious what you think, since you've been just salivating to talk about this.
What I want for our listeners out there is I want someone to look at them the way that Shawn Windsor looks at James Wiseman and Troy Weaver, by the way. Complete pass, complete just A+ grade on this trade that nobody understood, made no sense whatsoever, because it sounds like Troy Weaver's in love with the guy that he wanted to draft when he couldn't draft him. He went second overall. So Warriors, and you know how the Warriors franchise is like bumbling in the dark all the time. They don't know what they're doing. So obviously, they would obviously cut loose a player who had a really high ceiling and could still develop. But I saw a headline that was very interesting in the Free Press. It said it's not the gamble you might think it is, the James Wiseman trade. So please explain that headline to me, Shawn.
Well, it's not a gamble at all. Sadiq Bey is a 3-and-D
He
player.
didn't make one pass to Duran, so he's garbage, right?
Sadiq Bey is a good player, good locker room guy, solid player. I don't know that he's a good player.
Fan favorite, yeah.
Yes, as the beat guys love to point out, fan favorite. And the fans overestimate who this guy is, as you listen to anybody who covers the team will tell you. But Sadiq Bey is a 3-and-D guy who doesn't play D. So that's the issue. Now, he may get a little bit better as a team defender, because guys can learn a little bit how to be a team defender, although that so much of that is feel. But he's never going to be a great on-ball defensive guy. He wanted more. He didn't want to just be a catch-and-shoot shooter. And we saw that. He worked on his game, and good for him. It's admirable to do that. There's a lot of respect for that. But it pretzeled him up a little bit. Last year, which is why his shooting percentage has gone down since his rookie year, when he was primarily a catch-and-shoot guy. And then this year, he really struggled. Now, he would have these great nights and these great moments. He hit a buzzer beater from 30 feet to beat the Warriors in Golden State a month ago. So he's got those moments. Good dude. The team likes him. The players really liked him. And, but again, they feel like Isaiah Livers is close enough, and he's a second-round pick. He's not going to make the same kind of money, that they could part with him and take a flyer on Wiseman. So I think that they weren't going to re-sign Bey anyway. So why not try to get a little bit something for him? So that's why there's no huge gamble. They weren't going to re-sign him. He wasn't going to have a place in the longer term, because they're probably going to draft a wing. They're going to have a lottery pick again. If they get lucky, it'll be really high, and they probably want another wing. So that's to me what they were looking at. Like, where does Bey fit in? If he doesn't really fit in, let's take a swing on a guy with potential who may never be anything more than potential. But what are you really giving up? So that's the reason that the headline was there.
I guess if you look at it as this is obviously just to let's see what let's kick the tires on this guy, right? Because
pretty much
Bey is not the future. This guy may have some unlocked potential. Maybe Weaver's too much still in love with his, draft grade on this guy, whatever it was. But, you got to, where is he going to play right now? Right. There's so many guys that they have in the front court.
They got four big guys, but they don't have anybody like him. To me, he's a 7 foot tall, shooting 4. He has not shown he can do it consistently because he has a shot. I mean, he just
You want to say he's Giannis. You want to say he's Giannis. Just
no,
say
he's not like Giannis at all. To me, he's like Chris Bosh. He's a 7-foot tall Chris Bosh, and
he's retired.
Yeah, we don't love comps necessarily. They're always
that's all basketball is. It's all comps.
You know what we do it in every sport. But yeah, he's got a very specific skill set. It's just, and he's showing flashes of it. He doesn't know how to play basketball. You know, and that's the thing.
Isn't that important to play when you're on the NBA?
It's hugely important. But but some people can learn how to play. He's played less minutes than Jalen Duren, and he's in his 3rd year. Right? He's played 60 games. Unfortunately I've watched way too much of him because I watch the Warriors.
You're an expert, man.
Because I watch the Warriors all the time. It's when I can. I just like watching the NBA too. But the Warriors didn't necessarily. There was a rift out there too. The owner wanted to keep. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of the Warriors, but they did struggle a little bit to give up on him because they really liked him and they like his possibility, and he showed flashes here and there. But he's still a couple of years away, at least, from being a solid player, and that's just not going to help him. And they got a very narrow window with their core guys who are all in their mid-30s, including Steph Curry. So it really just became that for them. So it's kind of unusual when somebody gives up on that, but they feel like they got a shot at a title in the next couple of years and they wanted to go for it. And Wiseman's just not going to be ready for that. Yeah. And the player they got in return helped them win last year and is just perfect for their system, Gary Payton II. So that's basically what they flipped. But as far as the Pistons, if it doesn't work, what's lost, right? You gave up a guy you probably weren't going to resign anyway. If it does work, I think he can be a stretch 4 next to Jalen Duren. That's a big if. Who knows? But Weaver said, "Hey, you get talent. He's trying to figure it out." He's going to. They've got to win next. And I don't know how much Wiseman's going to help with this. Maybe not much. They need to start winning next year. They need to start being competitive. He gets a little bit of a pass because they haven't had their best player. You take the best player off any team, and they're gonna lose 20 games less, right? I mean, it's just how it is. But there's not the competitive zest and zeal night in and night out, and I think that's an issue. And I think we're going to have some conversations about whether this is the right staff to get that moving forward.
But how do you judge that now when you got basically an experiment? You're just trying to kick the tires on those guys and experiment. Let's see what happens. I mean, you're basically going to make sure you're losing what was Bay averaging about 15 points or whatever. I mean, you're losing that just to give some guys some minutes, and you're basically ensuring you're going to have a lottery pick. You're going to be in that lottery. So I guess you're in the big picture. I'm not going to say tanking, but you're making sure that you're not getting too good. But it's hard. It's going to be harder to watch this team even more. And they had their little flashes. They still have, even without K, they've won some games here and there. But it's been inconsistent
or been close or been competitive here and there. Yeah, no, they just. And they've been so bad defensively. Part of that's just the personnel they have too, right? I mean, you just think about Bogdanovich, who's their best scorer, is not a very good defender. Bay was not a very good defender. Jaden Ivey could theoretically at some point be a solid defender, but he's not right now, despite all that quickness. Duren, maybe. Livers is good positionally. I mean, but Alec Burks. Anyway, you go up and down the roster. Killian Hayes is probably their best perimeter defender. But it's just, and I think that's what fans get frustrated with, Carlos, when you see. I mean, they're the second or third worst defense in the NBA, and when you see that grates at people.
Yeah,
because they equate effort with that, and I don't know that. I think there's effort for most of the time. There's just not a competitive spirit in a way that you want to see consistently enough, and maybe Cunningham is. Maybe losing Cunningham is the biggest reason for that too. I don't know.
Is it different? How different is it in the NBA where it doesn't seem like you see players improve their defense that much. It's kind of like who they are after a couple of years is who they're going to be. And in college, it's more, I don't know if it's more of a system where coaches, I mean, like obviously like Izzo, you're just going to play great defense no matter what. That's something that you can always do. Your shot may be off, whatever, but you can always play good defense and hustle and all that stuff, effort, like you said. But in the NBA, is it kind of like I'm James Harden? I'm I'm going to jack up, 40 shots a game and not really play a lot of defense. And that's just who I am.
Well, Harden's an extreme example because he was at his peak, was one of the best offensive players ever played, but he didn't. Yeah, he just wasn't naturally a good defender. I don't know how much the want to there was. Maybe it was occasionally in the playoffs when they were rolling with Houston, or maybe when he was young with OKC. But I think that's a good question. To me, yeah, there are guys that come in the league, they're just immediately good defensive players. They have a great feel for it. On ball defenders and off the ball defenders, like Draymond Green from the start was a super gifted off the ball defender. He's also really good on the ball, depending on the position. But those guys are more unique and rare. But there are plenty of guys that come in that can learn team concepts to be a solid defensive player, team defensive player. And then there are guys that can get a little bit better on ball. But so you can get better. Let's go back to Golden State for a second. They have a forward, Andrew Wiggins, who was the first pick of the draft. Really, really good athlete. Didn't work out in Minnesota because he's not really an alpha number one kind of guy offensively. He gets to Golden State. He's found a good offensive role. And all of a sudden, he's turned into an elite level on-ball wing defender. And in fact, was a huge reason they won the title last year. And this is 6-7 years into his time in the
So
league.
Is that coaching then, or is it?
I think that ability was always there with Wiggins. So I think in that case, it's coaching mostly, and him being around those guys who all stress defense, and being around Draymond, right? Being around
The atmosphere.
Andre. So it's a combination. Andre Iguodala is one of the best wing defenders the last 20 years. Being around that, right, and having those guys in your ear coaching, so guys can get better. But the feel part of it, that's what's tough, man. Like, getting back to Wiseman real quick. It's not just that he doesn't know how to play basketball in certain fundamental ways. He's got all this skill. He's not physical either, and he struggles to catch the ball. His hands are small. He doesn't catch the ball very well. And he's not Chris Webber. And how do you get better at that? How do you teach that? I mean, this is why the Pistons fans are worried. This is why they think he's a bust, because there's some worries there, right? I mean, on the other hand, he's 7'1" and he can cross over. He's got ball skill. He can shoot out in 3-point range. So that's why you take the flyer if you're Weaver. But I don't think fans expect much. And I don't blame them. But in the end, why not? Why not? If you hit, then you really got something.
Yeah, it just seemed like they weren't. I think fans were hoping for, adding a difference maker. Something that was this is a logical piece that is going to help the team moving forward. Not we're getting the Volkswagen in the corner lot because that's all they got left, and we're just going to drive it around so you get a few miles out of it. Maybe it'll hold up. Maybe it'll be great and better than we thought. But it was a weird one. It didn't inspire a lot of hope. Is the problem?
Oh no, but again, I think a lot of fans are overestimating Sadiq Bey. I think that's the fundamental problem. And he wasn't going to get a lottery pick. He wasn't going to get a first-round pick, I don't think. I mean, he ended up getting essentially second-round picks back, because the Warriors traded 4 or 5 second-round picks to Portland to get Gary Payton. So basically, they swapped James Wiseman for second-round picks. So Bey was that's what Bay's worth, right?
Yeah.
So
this is a weird trade, and Payton's hurt, and
he's not even going to play for a while. No,
the Pistons get a player nobody wants. Payton's hurt, and
the Warriors were ecstatic to get Payton back. They didn't feel like they could afford to pay him in the offseason. Again, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of that, but the luxury tax, the bill over the salary cap that they were going to have to pay, and it was a huge mistake letting him go. But in order to re-sign Payton for what he was worth after how well he played, they were going to have to let go of Wiseman then. And the owner didn't want to do that. They wanted to get, he hadn't played this was his third year. He didn't play his whole second year. He only played 30-some games, 40-some games his first year, rookie year. And the owner didn't want to do that. He wanted to say, let's at least, right? So here we're at the trade deadline, and Curry and Green and Thompson and Kerr and all these guys are like, we can't win with him. We love him. All the stuff they said about him, good guy, good young kid, worked hard. They loved him, but they just knew they weren't going to win with him in the next couple of years. So they're like, You owe us. Go get us our guy. Go get us Gary Payton. Go get us somebody like that. So,
by the way, Gary Payton the second always makes me feel old because it feels like I was watching his dad play not that long ago, and now his kid is 30 years old and like, toward the second half of his NBA career, the second part of his end, it's like it just seems so. And by the way, I don't know much about him, but is he an epic trash talker like his dad or no?
No, I don't think he is. He's a great dunker for somebody who's only 6'2". In fact, he plays the dunker spot in their offense. He's almost like a center. He's just so athletic. Not a great offensive player, can hit the corner three, but he loves to stare down a little bit after dunks. But he doesn't talk like it. He doesn't talk like his dad. He's not as good all around players as Pop was. He's got a great story though. He was in the G League in and out. I mean, he didn't get on a full roster until last year, 28 years old.
I know.
So it's a great.
That was
story.
shocking.
Yeah, but and he just fit with those guys perfectly. In any case, all right, we'll see what happens with Wiseman. I just don't think if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I don't think it's going to derail any other plans. It just, Weaver's shown that he can take flyer guys. So far, it's not worked. Josh Jackson hasn't worked. Marvin Bagley worked a little bit last year. I don't know that they would like that signing now, extending, and they probably regret that. Maybe, I don't know. I don't put words in their mouth, but yeah, none of these flyers have worked just yet, have they?
No.
But Bogdanovich did, but people knew he was good. So that was probably his best signing. And some of these draft picks have got to hit. We'll see what they have. But they need to start showing more next year.
Well, if they get one mañana, that'll help.
That'd be fun. All right, it's time for your favorite thing, Carlos.
My favorite thing, I think I can't remember. I'm getting old, Shawn, so I may have mentioned this last year, but it was my wife's birthday recently, and we went shopping for her birthday present, and it turned out that she wanted a watch, and specifically a dive watch is what they're called. And they just have more water resistance essentially, but there's kind of a certain look to it, steel or whatever. But it was funny how just, we've been together for 25 years. And even though we started talking about this more, the last year or so, I just told her, I said, it's funny how I just never knew that you had an interest in something that I had this deep interest in. And she said, yeah, I've always kind of been interested in watches. I've always liked them. But because it kind of became a hobby to learn about them for me, I think it kind of brought her along and we started talking more about them. But it was just pretty fun and cool that so late in our relationship that we were kind of able to discover something, a commonality that we both had in us that it wasn't necessarily always present, but that came out later. And a shared interest is always nice to have, even if you think you know something about your wife when you've been, or any partner you've been together forever, and something kind of surprises you that you have like, no, I didn't really know that we share that interest. So that was my favorite thing last weekend.
I like that. It's never too late to learn, right? I mean, I learn new things about you all the time, and we've been together for a long, long time too. So, yeah,
it's like an old couple.
That's right. It's yeah, that's nice. All
Common law columnist. I like it.
I like that. All right, I'm gonna get a little heavy, or at least a little bit more serious. And sorry about this, but it's just I haven't been able to shake this image. Not that I saw, but just kind of imagined it. And I hate to say my favorite thing. That sounds sort of flippant for what I'm about to say, but I know it's going to be real. It's not my favorite thing because of the tragedy, but a couple things that happened Tuesday night were heartening in a way and fundamental in a way, and they both had to do with the police. And the first one is fairly simple. I loved hearing and reading about how the Michigan State campus police which is not in position to handle something like that, right? They just don't have the bodies, the people. Worked with, the East Lansing Police, the Lansing Police, the Michigan State Police. I think some folks from Flint came over. So you've got all these jurisdictions working together to keep what was an awful situation from getting even more awful. And it's just a nice reminder because, we talk a lot about the police in this country and the policing culture, and rightfully so. And there are definitely some tragedies the other way that are at the hands of the police that should never be. And we need to fix some of those things, and we're trying to fix some of those things. But when you see something like this, and you got thousands and thousands and thousands of people you're trying to protect in real time, spread over all these acres of Michigan State's campus, to have all these agencies in different jurisdictions come together to keep something from getting completely out of hand, or a tragedy getting even far more tragic, I think is a great thing, and it's a reminder that we can still communicate with each other and come together to protect and to be kind of human beings. The other thing involved that night also involved the police, and this is going to be a little trickier for some people. But for me, I was talking to my son, Sam, as I talked at the top of the show most of that night, and he was listening to the scanner, and there was a lot of misinformation, including the fact when there was a report that there was a gunshot just a couple of buildings over that scared the living daylights out of him when he put a couch up against, like a lot of kids when they heard that. In any case, later on, as we were talking, he kind of had the scanner on in the background. He could hear in real time when the suspect shot himself, and that there was a man who fit the description of the suspect. That's kind of how it was reported. The police were talking about it, that he shot himself, because I think they had him kind of surrounded at that point or close to it. And then I don't assume it was a first responder. I don't want to make a total assumption here, but either a first responder or a police officer, some kind of authority there, gave that man who had just shot up these kids CPR. And I could hear that in real time. And I know it probably wasn't easy for that person. I'm sure they had mixed feelings. But the fact is that in our society, even though they were fairly certain this is who had done it, you still are innocent until proven guilty. And that's still a human being. And the protocol is, as a society, we say we are going to try to save your life despite what's just happened there, even though maybe we may not want to. And so those officers kneeled down, I'm assuming, and tried to revive him. And that made me feel okay for a minute about our larger society. That despite all the chaos, all our differences, all that in a moment like that, we have fundamental things that we still agree on. And then in that moment, somebody's going to try to save the life of another person who had just done what they'd done. And that has stuck with me for the last few days. I can't get that thought out of my head. I think that is a good thing. I think that's a good thing, because we don't want anarchy. We don't want chaos. We don't want complete vigilantism, right? We want our structures to hold up. And in that moment, it held up. And I think that's a beautiful thing in an awful, tragic circumstance. Anyway.
That's very well said. I totally agree with you.
So that's it's not that it's my favorite thing, but I found it comforting that when it gets right down to it, we're not going to completely fall apart.
We can only hope.
Yes. Hope and faith, right, Carlos?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Sorry to be heavy there, but
no, that's the time calls for it.
All right. We need to thank some people, don't we?
Yeah, we need to thanks to our producers, Andrew Hammond and Robin Chan, for doing all the heavy lifting, the real work, listening to us babble on. Executive producer Kirkland Crawford, and interim editor on Jeanette Delgado. This is the first time. This might be the first show that she's only gotten one mention. But Shawn, mostly we want to thank you, the listener, for spending some time with us.
Yeah, we don't want to thank me. We want to thank the listeners, you all, right?
Y'all. As Andrew better get used to saying that. Y'all.
Y'all's such a great thing to say. It's it's neutral.
I don't like it, actually. I don't like it because we're not in the South. If you're in the South, you should say it. If you're not in the South,
it's neutral.
Don't try to appropriate it. It's not right.
I say it because I'm a Southerner, but it's neutral and welcoming and warm. So it's not so bad, but it does have a lot of associations that are probably not so pleasant. All right, we don't want to get down that rabbit hole. We're trying to say goodbye. We're trying to thank people.
And where do we find it? Where does the listener find us?
Well, I assume if they're listening to us, they know where to find us. But we're going to go ahead and assume that maybe who knows? I don't know. Find us wherever you find your favorite podcast: Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Most importantly, subscribe when you get there, and give us a rating. We really appreciate the ratings. We love the subscriptions. If you don't like us, tell us. But just tell us, right? I think that's always appropriate. All right. I think we've thanked everybody we need to thank. I think we've told people where to find us. I think they know that. And I want to thank you, Carlos. It's always a pleasure. I look forward to it every week. I know it's a little harder. Well, that's the wrong way to put it. It's a much tougher show and not always easy to do this, but I'm glad we did. And thanks for bearing with me a little bit today.
Anytime.
All right, Carlos. I look forward to getting back next week. And hopefully it'll be mostly sports. Maybe we should get some food going. We haven't done that in a while.
Yeah, it's time.
Maybe we should get Lindsay in. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. All right. Or we'll just get Dave Burkett in every week. Who knows?
Talk about his chicken nuggets.
Yeah. Dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets. That'd be great. All right. Until next week, Carlos, we will be back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn.